you make it look so easy. Gosh, kicking must be pretty simple. I'm like, yeah, I make it look easy, but it wasn't overnight, for that to happen. I worked hard to make that look easy. Although, yeah, it does look easy because I know what I'm doing, but it took time to get to that level. So again, any profession in any industry really, to get to the top of the level of whatever it is you're doing, you got to put work in.
Welcome everyone to another episode of the Brand Analysis Podcast. On our show today is, why don't you just introduce yourself?
Mike Hollis, the original Jacksonville Jaguars kicker, back from 1995 to 2001. I also kicked for the Buffalo Bills and the New York Giants, and retired in 2004. And now just living the dream, loving what I do, and just focusing on spreading my knowledge of the kicking aspects into the kicking world. Love it.
Nice. So why don't you tell everyone a little bit about your journey into the NFL and a little bit about where you're at now?
Wow, how much time do we have? I could go
on.
What time
do you need?
No, it was a very challenging journey in a way, because I'm 5'8" on a good day, 180 pounds, and I was overlooked by a lot of coaches, and even my journey going from high school to college was challenging. And again, it was because of my size. I was better than some other guys at the time I was playing against in high school, and it was kind of unfair in my opinion that I was overlooked, but that kind of fueled my fire. It gave me an opportunity to work harder and prove a lot of people wrong, which I did. I went on to a junior college, played 2 years at Wenatchee Valley College in Central Washington, and then was able to have an opportunity for a scholarship as a walk-on at the University of Idaho. And so every place I went, whether it was, junior college was a scholarship, but it wasn't a whole lot, but the universities that had an interest, every one of them had an interest, but with no scholarship offers. So it was kind of like it was a gamble. I had to make sure that, I was going to the right place and doing the right things. And so that was a little challenging too, but took advantage of that opportunity and earned that scholarship at University of Idaho. And then now going from Idaho to the NFL was a little bit of a challenge. I got on with the Chargers in 1994 and was able to be there in training camp competing against John Carney, and learned a lot. I knew I was going to be just a camp leg going in there and doing my thing, and learned a lot, and I grew from that. So it was a great experience for me. And the next year was when the Jacksonville franchise had opened up, also with the Carolina Panthers that same year. And actually the Chargers wanted me to go back to San Diego. And again, I felt it was a better opportunity for me because in that time, John Carney had gone to the Pro Bowl in 94. So I knew that, I was going to be just another camp leg, and I wanted to play, so I had an opportunity to work out for the Jaguars twice, actually. That was another thing that I had to battle. It was a hurdle that I had battled before. It was my size. Tom Coughlin didn't think I was someone that they wanted to have on their team primarily because of my size. And, it really didn't matter. It was a matter of how well I could kick a ball. I can understand if I was a punter at 5'8", having a snap that's over my head. I'm not tall enough to catch a snap, but I'm a kicker. I don't need to touch the ball at all. So I literally had to convince Tom Coughlin and the Jaguar staff that I was worthy of a kicker in the NFL at 5'8", 180 pounds. And I think I changed the minds of a lot of people in the Jacksonville, staff, and most importantly, Tom Coughlin, because later on as I played, during my years here in Jacksonville, I got credit for 11 tackles on special teams, of course, kickoff. But I know I had more than that because we had some, holding penalties that would negated those tackles that you'll never see on the stats. But I was an athlete. I got in there and I did the best I could. I wasn't going to be one of those kickers that just kind of, tries to fluff them down or trip them or whatever. I got in there and I want to make sure that I was, showing my teammates and my coaches that I could play football, and I wasn't just a kicker.
I see that. You see that a lot. You see a lot of the commentators laughing about that when you see the kickers going and trying to make a dive. Sometimes the quarterbacks too, but more so the kickers. I see it all the time, and I laugh a little bit because why don't you tell people a little bit because where I was going at with that is my dad played in the NFL for a very small amount of time. And so when I grew up, I was forced to play, not forced. He kind of, he was being a father, but he wanted me to play soccer to kind of, get my foot skills going and to do all that before I transition into a kicker. So why don't you tell people a little bit about, because I think a lot of fans in particular, they kind of look at kicking as that one thing of, because they don't see all the background of all the skills and stuff that kind of are needed for that.
Yeah, that is a position that's overlooked in that regard by the armchair quarterbacks of the world, the guys that think that just anybody can do it. And to be honest, I believe, in my opinion, that a lot of the guys that are playing in the NFL right now, that there's guys out there that have really good form, they're really smooth, and they're good at what they're doing. But the majority of the athletes in the NFL right now as kickers are extremely good athletes. I was never going to be an extremely good athlete. I worked hard, but I wasn't given that incredible gene like a lot of those guys were given. And not only that, they're bigger, faster, stronger than I ever was or ever will be. So I had to rely a lot on my technique. And again, there is a lot to do with, you think of golf, think how tedious golf can be sometimes. And it's kind of the same way with kicking. And the thing that I learned as a kicker in the NFL is I really was able to focus on my form and technique more so than actually making the kick, which kind of sounds kind of strange. People ask me, like, how'd you deal with it mentally? How was it? Was it really hard mentally? Yeah, it was challenging. It's mentally, physically and mentally difficult because you're kicking, you're playing a sport at the highest level in the world. In a position that you got one chance to make the kick. It's not like baseball where you get, four balls and 3 strikes. You got one chance to kick that football and make it. So, and what's worse is it's actually expected of you every time. So, especially at that level, and especially playing for a guy like Tom Coughlin, there was no mediocrity. That you cannot be complacent. It was they expected perfection day in and day out. And again, I agree. I believe that 100%. I expect that of myself as well. So there's a lot of work that goes into a technique that you have to, get to the ability to be able to trust. You have to actually, incorporate that technique into what you're doing. And the biggest part about kicking, in my opinion, is what I said before. You can't care about the result. If you're a result-driven kicker, you're going to now rely on your athletic ability to steer that ball through the uprights. And I never had, I can't say never, when I was younger I did, but not until I started to learn this ProForm kicking technique from a guy by the name of Jim Gaetano, who's now he's my coach here at the facility where we coach. He taught me this way of kicking where it kind of required trust. It required trust in the technique, and actually it made it a lot easier because I was able to dumb down the process a lot easier than a lot of guys that were just athletically steering that ball. And the other thing too about those kind of guys is that when they get into a slump, which we're all going to have, what was their answer to their slump? They didn't really have much of a foundation to fall back on. So other than just athletically just trying to, I got to kick it harder maybe next time, or what, they really don't know what to do sometimes. So at least in my case with the technique and stuff that I worked on and tried to perfect on a daily basis, I'll put it that way, because it was very difficult. I don't even know, to be honest with you, if I've ever had a perfect kick in my entire life. As far as being as close as perfect, I could tell you I was 99.9% as close as perfect as I could be on some kicks. But that's the challenge, is that that even learning this technique and getting better, you're still striving for that perfection. But even in the process of doing this stuff, you're still getting good. And that's kind of, even my first couple of years in the NFL, I was still learning this technique, and it finally caught on, and things were easier at that point. And it makes it easier to dumb things down. And again, that has a lot to do with the mental stress as well. If you're able to dumb down the situation and make it less stressful, absolutely, 100%. Why add some more, stress and to your plate, really, as far as, having more pressure on yourself. You're going to get pressure from the team, the coaches, the players, the fans, clearly the fans. But again, it's your job, and you know what you're doing. They don't know what you're doing. You do, you know what you're doing. So as long as you can, trust what you're doing on a day in, day out basis, and just focus on positive things, and good things will start to happen. And that's kind of the name of the game, really, for me.
Yeah, I think that's something that I've kind of working with athletes that I've kind of seen from that outside perspective. And nothing against my Atlanta Falcons, but I think that that's kind of showcases kind of some of those losses that you get from when you come from behind and stuff like that. And it happens in the business world too. I mean, you overthink stuff, and so when you overthink stuff, you put too much pressure on yourself, and when you put too much pressure on yourself, productivity actually lacks more than it exceeds. And I think that a lot of fans don't see that when it comes to, especially being a kicker, because like I always say when I watch the game, I'm like, man, everyone thinks that every fan that watches kickers out there playing, they think that the kickers have it easy because they're only out there for a couple plays. I'm like, but listen, like usually those kicks are crunch time. It's that extra point that the team loses by, when they'll look back and they say, oh, well, they lost by 1 point. It's all because of that missed kick, or they need that extra 3 points to win the game in overtime or at the end of the game. And that must be something that's really hard to wrap your head around. Would you agree with that?
It is definitely to the average person that wants to treat it that way. But if you can kind of trick your brain into thinking that every kick is the same, why would a 51-yard game-winning kick be any different than a 30-yard kick at the beginning of the game? There's no difference. Why? I don't need to treat that kick any differently than I would in any other circumstance or situation. That's the thing too, is if you look at the result or the consequences of your actions on the field, if you look at the result or the consequences of what you're about to do, then that's going to put pressure on yourself. But if you just treat it like just another day, just you've done that same kick a million times, why would you do that kick any different? And that's a lot of times what kickers get in trouble with, is ultimately second guessing themselves. And I was a victim of it as well. Clearly, my first year and a half or so, I wasn't thinking this certain way. And Brian Barker, who was a punter for the Jaguars, he told me one day, he said, listen, Mike, you have to think about this on game day. When you walk on the field in game day, the field is still 120 yards long, clearly 100 yards, without the end zones. The goalposts are still 18 feet, 6 inches wide. The field is the same. The hashes are the same. There's absolutely 100% nothing different about the field on game day than our practice field on any other day. Everything is the same, with the exception of, you're in a stadium now, you got people watching you now. And now it matters, but that shouldn't change what you do. So in other words, don't do anything more on game day than you think you need to do, because there's no reason to. Why would you try harder on game day? It's actually, if anything, I would think about trying less in a way that more relaxed and confident, because you got the adrenaline of the game. It's game day. There's fans watching. There's TV cameras everywhere. There's probably millions of people watching on TV, but that in itself will add that excitement. So you don't need any extra excitement. You need to actually just be calm and allow and trust your form and technique and everything you've worked so hard to do. Let that do your work for you on game day. It's really that simple.
Yeah. I mean, I think that goes for. I think it's funny that you say that, because one of the reasons I got in this field is because I saw such a connection with playing sports and playing in the NFL and stuff like that to business, and how it relates so much. And I think that a lot of people from the outside world, not just watching sports, but from the business perspective, they don't see the value in other things. And I think it's just because they don't do that for a living, so there's so much stuff out there now saying, oh, get this for this or do this for this, and it acts like it's easy, when in reality that's kind of downplaying it. That's not how it works in football or business. I mean, no one sees how many kicks, like how many average kicks would you say during training that you would do, let's just say on a week basis?
Oh boy. I really don't know. Honestly, if I kick more than 30 or 40 balls a day in a say a 4-day practice week. And clearly game day, I'm going to kick a lot more than that, but not a whole lot, probably a lot less than you might think. But again, I was different. I didn't need to kick a lot. But on the other hand, with my technique and form, the way I kick, I could kick for hours. I didn't have a problem with it. And that's where there's a lot of guys out there talking about kick counts and things like that. And you mentioned something earlier about working hard. And that's one thing too, is that you're right. People don't see the hard work that you put in and the dedication and being a team player. As a kicker, I did all the running and everything that all the team did, actually more. Brian Barker and I, we would do a lot of our conditioning, and then at the end of practice, the team would run as a team. And guess what? The kickers and punters were out there running as well. Mm-hmm. So again, we probably worked a little bit harder. And clearly, we're not out there running plays in the middle of August and September in Jacksonville where it's 100 degrees. But we're still working hard. And I think that at that level, when you get to a level of any success of any industry, whatever it might be, you've put work in to get to that level. Don't let anybody tell you have not. Clearly they see, and especially in my position where I'm kicking, and I'm say that I've heard this too, like, Mike, you make it look so easy. Gosh, kicking must be pretty simple. I'm like, yeah, I make it look easy, but it wasn't overnight, for that to happen. I worked hard to make that look easy. Although, yeah, it does look easy because I know what I'm doing, but it took time to get to that level. So again, any profession in any industry, really, to get to the top of the level of whatever it is you're doing, you got to put work in. If everything was, the CEOs of the world were making millions of dollars, if anybody could do it, everybody would be doing it. Why wouldn't you want to earn $1 million a year if it was that easy? Heck yeah. But people don't look at it that way.
No, they don't. I think a lot of people look at, I think it's funny when I'll be out watching a game or doing something, and someone will bring up, a player and be like, oh, well, he has millions, and like they earn too much or this and that. And it's like, yes, every field's different with the way the money works and how much you make. But at the end of the day, it's the same thing I see with a lot of these Facebook ads and stuff out now with businesses, and saying, oh, we'll help your business grow with this with only $100 a month or $200 a month. I'm like, what are you doing? I mean, that's not even enough to work for 3 hours a month. I'm like, what do you think you're going to get here with 3? And I feel like it kind of puts businesses in a perspective of, I actually think it's a disservice to businesses, because what it does is it makes them think mentality, oh, I can make millions off of just spending $300 a month. When it's like, no, every business, just like an athlete, you have to train hard. It's a team sport. You have to work with the right people. There's lots of systems in place. So I think that's a good lesson for people is to kind of learn that, hey, yeah, you don't have to spend, there are going to be people out there that try to take your money or, try to leverage you or use you in a wrong way. But I do agree with you. That there is a lot of hard work in whatever you do. And with that said, like, so how do you feel when you got close to the end of your career? What made you decide to open your business? And you can talk a little bit about that, and how hard was that transition into the business world?
Well, starting with that last question, it was difficult. It was not what I thought it was going to be, and primarily because when it stops, and you don't associate really with the guys that one day you were in the locker room hanging out and talking and having a good old time, playing on the same field, and sweat, blood, and tears, and the next day you're not. And so you kind of have to look within yourself. And the thing that a lot of people don't realize as well is that the longer you play in the NFL, the more obsolete your college degree or your whatever your skills were before, the more obsolete they become. Having played, basically 9-10 years, away from my degree in college, I couldn't use that degree. I mean, yeah, it might look good on a resume, but I would probably have to go back and get certified. And you think about the peers that you went to school with who, 10 years after graduating the same time you did, they're in the middle of their careers doing probably just fine with their degrees, whereas I'm kind of starting all over. So it's difficult because people don't realize that. But then again, they think, well, you got all the money in the world. You can just, put that money in the bank and earn interest and live on that. And I'm like, yeah, no, I was a kicker. And, I was in the time frame when kickers were starting to get paid pretty well. But now these guys are getting all kinds of money. But then again, so it's a little bit of a challenge, and I didn't really know what I wanted to do. So there was a good, I guess I retired in 2004, but I didn't start this academy until 2007 because I wasn't really sure what I wanted to do. I had some time to kind of think about it. It wasn't like financially I was, desperate for money and work at that time. But in all honesty, I have to work. What people, well, how's it like being retired? Well, I retired from a sport, but I'm not retired from life. I do work. I do, I have this thing that I'm doing. And that's really where I'm going with this whole kicking academy, is that I was extremely passionate about kicking in the NFL and just playing and just challenging myself to be the best that I could be. And the other thing too about the stuff that I was working on and the technique that I was using in the NFL, it's different than most. And so the example of me playing 9 years in the NFL, going to a Pro Bowl, leading the NFL in scoring in 1997, kicking a 59-yard field goal in a game, in a dome, all of that. I'm not saying that to impress you. I'm saying that to impress upon you that I did that at 5'8" on a really good day and 180 pounds. I was a small guy and I was able to achieve a lot of cool things. And again, it wasn't because I was extremely athletic and big and freakishly strong and all that. I was very average as an athlete. I'm below average as far as size is concerned, but I didn't want people to tell me what I could and couldn't do. And so that was a challenge for me. So I developed a passion for kicking, and I developed a very big passion for kicking the way I do. And because I know it works. I know that if somebody like me, an average athlete, can do what I did, I know that anybody can do that. And so that's where it leads me back to where I was talking about before. Most of the athletes, most of the kickers in the NFL right now are very good athletes. They're extremely athletic. They're strong. They're big. They're fast. You name it. And they got good at certain techniques that they did. But even though what they're doing, I think that they'd be even better doing it the way I'm teaching it. Not to say that what they're doing is wrong. I'm just saying, based on my personal experience as an average athlete and 5'8" on 180 pounds, I did things that you guys that are big, strong, freakish, athletic are doing now. They got strong legs, don't get me wrong, but there's something to say about the technique that I've used, and that's where my passion really is. So again, going back to the ProForm Kicking Academy that I'm doing now, I have a passion for teaching it because of how well it worked for me. And the guys that really commit to it and understand it and know it, you'll hear them like quickly after they finally have that first kick that they were just like, wow, that felt so different and so good. That's when they finally realize that, yeah, he knows what he's talking about. This is good stuff. And then it becomes more of an addiction. Yeah, call it a passion if you want, but it's more of an addiction to this kicking style. And it's so rewarding as a coach and as a person, as a mentor, to see those kind of things happening to the kids that we're working with. And every year we have kids getting scholarships at certain schools, and it's really cool to see that. And I'm happy for those guys because they worked really hard.
Yeah, no, definitely. How were you able to handle that, the challenges of that transition?
Well, it's of referring to life after football or the actual, okay. Yeah. Again, I'm more of I wasn't more of a goal setter per se. So people say, well, what are your goals? Well, my goals are to do the best I can day in and day out under the circumstances that I'm given. Because, I don't, there's long-term goals. People like have these goals and dreams of being somebody or being something or reaching a certain level of something. Yeah, those are always there, but those are not the most important goals for me, at least. My most important goals for me is to do the best that I can and day in and day out on the circumstance I'm given. And every day I look myself in the mirror, and if I can truly and honestly tell myself that I did the best I could under those circumstances today, and maybe today wasn't a great day, but I did the best I could, then I'm okay with that. So again, I think people get a little bit discouraged if they don't reach certain goals. And I think that's just a negative to begin with. Like, why, you failed. Oh, I failed the goal. Like, well, I didn't really fail the goal because I did the best I could under the circumstances I was given. I'm not making excuses. I'm just saying, clearly, I don't know if I could have done that any differently. So again, there's always trials and errors to things, and there's always going to be failure. But I'm not going to ever let failure define me as a person. So what it is in this transition between life after football and, actually playing the game and now the real world, I'm doing the same stuff. Mentally, I'm treating life the same as I did when I was playing football. Like, I want to do the best I can under every day, under the circumstance I'm given. and let the cards fall where they may. And I'm okay with that. Some people think differently. They clearly I want to be successful, and yeah, money's great. But for those people who think that money is everything, I promise you it's not. I had money. I had lots of money back in the day when I was playing, and it's actually adds more stress, because with more money, a lot of times you have more responsibilities and more toys and more things and more this and more that, and it becomes more of a burden, to be honest with you. So more money really is not the key. Happy life is what I'm looking for, and I'm a very happy, optimistic kind of person, and I do the best I can, and I enjoy what I'm doing, and I love helping others do the same.
Yeah, I think a lot of people preach that, and I think in business it's very similar. You have to kind of find your passion like you did, and kind of have to make sure you're happy while you're doing it, because there's going to be a lot of failures, and as you go through those failures, you are going to have. I tell my wife, I just call it the business depression, because I feel like one day I'll just be depressed. There's no reason why, and I'm like, and I'll know I'll be fine tomorrow, but because you have these goals you have to set in mind, and most of the time you don't pass those goals, but you learn from those goals, like you said. So next time you do that goal, or next time you pass that goal, you'll do better. But then you look past the whole year and you look at those goals that you've done, and you're like, well, I'm actually doing a lot better than I was, a year ago. I got a lot more done than I thought. And so sometimes too, it's the whole aspect of slow down, and you're going to have these goals, but if you don't get past these goals on time, just know that you're always trying to do better. As long as you're trying to do better, grow as a person, and grow as, a business owner, you should be just fine. And I think that's where we come back to our original point, where people want things fast. They see so many gurus out there, and so many be like, make $1 million by next year and do this. And at the end of the day, it's like, they're only making $1 million because they're tricking you to think you can make $1 million. It's not how it really works in the real world. So you've talked a little bit about your business a little bit. So why don't you get into a little more deep into your passion and why you opened that business in general?
Well, I mean, it's like I said before, it's really where I stood, and the things that I've accomplished at my stature, that average athlete that was never going to be real big, freakishly athletic and strong.
I'm 5'8" too, by the way.
Huh?
I'm 5'8" too, by the way. So
okay,
I feel
yeah. But yeah, I mean, it's because I was able to achieve something that a lot of people thought I couldn't. And not to say that I didn't think I could. And that was the stance I took back in the day. Even getting my road to the NFL was when I'm learning this technique in this form, I wanted to get as good. And this is what I tell my kids all the time. It's like, we want you to understand that we want to give you the option or the ability to get to the level of success that specifically you are capable of getting. If it happens to be the NFL, that's great. That's just icing on the cake. But what you'll never know unless you get to that level of success that you can get to. Whereas a lot of guys think differently. They think they're striving so hard to get the NFL, and they're working on the wrong stuff, and they wonder why they haven't made it there yet. But again, that's what I'm teaching with the style of coaching we're doing, and the technique and things like that. We have mastered the abilities to get kids to be the best that they can be, regardless of their athletic ability and whatever level. And that was my stance. I never had a dream of playing in the NFL. When I went to college, my junior college, and went on to Idaho, I was thinking, I was able to play in college. That's great. I'm going to do the best that I can in college, and I'm going to challenge myself to be the best, kicker I can be. And whatever level of success I can get, that's great. So that's another way of thinking about things. And again, we have a lot of kids too in these days and times that, and you've probably heard it before, where these kids are, they won't consider a Division III or Division II scholarship offer. They won't even look at it. I'm D1. And they're very prideful, and maybe they have reasons to be, maybe they don't. The parents are really proud of their kids. The coaches are influencing these kids like, oh yeah, you're definitely D1. So all they're hearing is D1 this whole time. Well, maybe they're not Division I level, caliber kids. Yeah. So they're passing up on all these free education, scholarships, call it what you want, at other schools that are just as good academically, sometimes better than a lot of the Division I schools, just as good athletically in their sports programs as some of the Division I schools out there. But these kids want that Division I label, and they're going to end up sitting, on the bench, riding the pine for 2 or 3 years at that Division I school that they had to walk onto. So which one would you rather do? Would you rather go to a Division II or III? University of Idaho was Division I AA. Was I too prideful for that? Heck no. I was honored to have an opportunity to get a Division I AA scholarship. And I did. And that was great, but some kids, they think differently. And unfortunately it could be coming from tons of different directions. Like I said before, the parents, their peers, their own friends telling them how great they are. There is a sense of humbleness you've got to have to be able to kind of be realistic about yourself and where you think you can get and how good you are at what levels you can play. And you don't want to, the last thing you want to do is miss out on an opportunity for a free scholarship. So again, I think that's the mindset of these kids sometimes gets in the way. But as long as you're focused on getting you to the best you can, just let the cards fall where they may, and be happy with the work that you put in to do that. And that's really something that people need to think about.
I think that's interesting that you say that, because one thing that I always tell college kids and people that are thinking about either going to college or they think they just want to go out and start opening their own business, you hear a lot of people out there saying you don't need to go to college to make millions of dollars. Just open your own business. And in my sense, I always said, hey, colleges aren't there for you to. I mean, I think it goes the same for grades. Everyone goes, oh, I'm just striving for that A. I'm just striving for that A. And in reality, leverage college they're really trying to teach you to teach yourself. That's really what colleges are trying to do. So that as you grow older, you can go, oh, I need to learn this. I can learn this. And you can push it on yourself to learn it. And I think what you just said is a golden opportunity for student athletes to look at and say, hey, I could go to the D1 school and their mindset is, oh, I'm going to D1. I'm really good. I, can the sponsors and the agents will find me easier if I'm at D1. When in reality, it's like what you should be doing is if you have a D2 school or D3 that's going to actually put you on the field where you can actually be, a starter, have more time in front of the fans that are watching you kick and be able to build that. Because like you said, you see a lot of these kickers come in and the ones that I think flop are the ones that like you said, that put too much pressure on themselves. And a lot of that comes to, they didn't teach themselves to, like you said, to really be able to handle themselves and stuff like that. So that's some good advice is, try to look at it more as, hey, I'm really here my goal is really to teach myself to be better. I'm not, the people that make it to the NFL, or, to the Canadian or to, maybe it's just, arena or something like that. It's the whole aspect of, hey, they didn't just stop at high school and just say, hey, I'm done for the next 5 years until you get in the NFL. They kept learning and improving and growing. So I think that's some good advice is, look at your opportunities and try to think about it in more of a way of how am I going to continue growing as I try to reach my goal. So with that said, with that transition and going a little bit further past the college aspect, what makes you think that you being an athlete yourself and going through that transition and us talking a little bit about how the athletic side relates to the business side a little bit, why do you think athletes in general make potential good business owners?
Well, I think the first and probably the most important answer I would give you is our drive for perfection. I mean, if I'm a business owner, I want it to be top notch. I want it to be, as good as I can get it. And as far as work ethic is concerned, you have to understand guys that get to NFL level, like we talked about before, it's not something they just woke up one day and now they're an NFL player. They worked their butts off to be there. And I did as well, clearly. But, getting to that level, the road to getting to the NFL and maintaining that as well is very, very challenging, and it's rewarding because you know how much work you've put in there to get to that level, and then to maintain that level as long as you could possibly do, of course. So I think that it boils right back down into the real world mentality where again, I catch myself being a little biased in a sense that, I like to do things on my own, because not that I don't trust when other people do it. Clearly, there's people that know a lot more about a lot more other stuff than I do, and I'm not gonna be the one to try to overrule them. And I'm definitely, I know where I stand when it comes to certain, professions and expertise. I'm not going to challenge anybody when they're experts at what they do. But there's certain things in life that if you want done yourself, you're gonna do it good because you know that you've done it yourself. And with business in general, I think that even like employers, I think that they would really prefer or would be ecstatic if they had a former professional football player applying for their position, whatever that might be, because clearly the mindset, the work ethic, and the responsibility, I think is something that stands out in guys, because we know what it took to get to that level. And I've told people this too, and it's hard to say because I don't want people to think this different about me, but I have a hard time feeling sorry for people sometimes, and especially these days, because there's this mindset of entitlement maybe, and kind of things that should be coming easier to people and things like that. And nothing came easy to me. Nothing ever came easy to me. I worked very hard for everything that I've gotten. And that's why I don't feel sorry for people who complain about certain things. It's like, if you knew how important it was, for you as an individual, if it was important for you as an individual, you'd work hard and you'd be prideful in achieving what you've done. And that's the other thing too, I'll add on as a business owner, being a former athlete, as a business owner, is the fact that I get a lot of success and comfort in knowing that I've done well for other people. And in the business I am in, it's a service business. I'm teaching kids how to kick football as the best that they can possibly do it, and it's very rewarding. I've felt that I've succeeded, and it's a very comforting feeling to know that I've helped people out. And again, it's because I know how much work it took me to get to a certain level. And these kids are following those same sort of footsteps and working hard to achieve whatever they can achieve. And you got to give them a lot of credit for working hard and trusting what I'm telling them to do. And that's the thing too, is as a business owner, regardless of what profession you're in, you got to push your employees, you got to push people in general and get the best out of them. And that's not for your benefit, it's for their benefit. You want them to know how good they can be. And I'm telling you, they always talk about the human brain is much more powerful than you think. That's true. The human brain is much more powerful than you think. You are so much more, you have so many more abilities than you can possibly imagine. But it takes that person to challenge those abilities, to understand that they can actually do them. If you're not going to challenge yourself in certain abilities or whatever it is you're doing, you'll never know how good you're going to be. So take risks, have failures. It's okay. We all have them. It's going to happen. It's part of life.
Yeah, it's funny in this day of social media. I'm a millennial, and I do social media for my players and for all my clients and stuff like that. But it's funny because I'm a millennial. I'm at the very beginning of a millennial. I was born in '85. But I've never taken a selfie in my life. I've never been one to, have that mentality of, I'm an introvert. I was an introvert, and I had to push myself to be an extrovert once I started, growing my business. That's just part of the game and trying to help people. And I think that it's really hard with how social media has been pushed to that, because I'm very similar to you in that aspect. I worked really hard. I made it through college, and I went into the corporate world for a few years before I finally, went out on my own. And you get a different mentality when you own a business. And one of the reasons I started working with athletes is because I saw some similarities in how, like you were just saying, you're trying to help people. Like in football, your goal is to make the fans happy. At the end of the day, that's your big goal. And yes, there's other things behind it, which we don't have to talk about, but it's the same as business. And your goal is to make your clients happy. And I forgot where I was kind of going with this a little bit, but I feel like you just said, I'm that same way when I kind of see certain people. There's always going to be different people that, they have bad circumstances and it happens. But I think social media has pushed this whole thing where people want gratification for things that they've done. And yes, it's great that people do that stuff. And I don't mind giving you praise as long as you're learning from the positives and the negatives and pushing forward and trying to grow from those situations. And I don't talk about this that much, but I used to, I was a big partier. I used to drink a lot in college, and I got to the point one day where I just said, I'm not drinking anymore. I just don't want to. And I see it that's been about 8 years now. And I see now that, it was my choice to do that. And yes, there are certain things that can lead to depression, and there's certain things that lead to anxiety, but I personally overcame a lot, and I personally pushed myself through hardships. And I think that it wasn't until I realized that every human being is different. Everyone goes through hard points. And yes, some of those hard points for somebody may seem less. Me growing up, I grew up in, it's funny, my wife is from a smaller town. She grew up in a really good, house environment. Mine was all right. But I went through a lot of hardships when I was in high school and college, a lot of stuff that you don't see a lot of people going through. And so I learned from those mistakes fast. I learned from them young. And so when I see someone now that is 35, 36 and something, let's just say, they had something that I dealt with when I was 15, 16, I don't look at them and say and judge them for it. I look at them and I say, hey, you know what? With their mentality and who they are as a person, that's hard for them, just like me going through something. If this is hard for me right now. Yes, from different perspectives, mine might seem harder or theirs might seem harder, but that's why everyone's different. It's just the fact of learning from it, growing from it, and trying to become a better person and trying to still be part of this huge community. So I'm getting off subject a little bit here, but I totally agree with you on that. And I think that as students and as college kids and even as athletes, they go and they make that transition into business, or they go and make that transition outside the game and doing a career from it, need to learn that and really understand the aspects of it's hard, it's a grind, learn from your mistakes and just keep going. I mean, with everything that's happened this year, I think everyone's had an impact, and that's just the thing there. Everyone has had an impact. So I don't go out and complain about it. I just say, you know what, I'm just going to dive and do the best I can with the situation I'm put forth in, and it's hard, but I think that we can all learn from that and just kind of try our best to move on and not move on, but learn from it and grow as we all go through society together.
Yeah. Well, one thing that people don't realize, and what I've found is that, what if you failed at something, what option do you have at that point? You can quit or try harder or try to fix whatever it is or learn from it or whatever, but it's very easy to quit. So I always look at it like, what other option do I have? Quitting really is not an option, because especially if you've committed to something. And especially if you have other people that are relying on you for something, quitting is clearly not an option. So when you're in these real life struggles, like we all are today with COVID and everything going on in this world, this whole presidential, thing is going crazy. This nation is becoming divided, and you have no other option. We got to make things better. So when people start feeling sorry for themselves or things aren't going their way, and that's where I was going to that whole that entitlement part, is like these entitled individuals, if they do not succeed at something, they're the first ones to give up, because they think, well, someone else will take care of it, or someone else will do something. I don't need to do. Again, it's like you are responsible for you. And believe it or not, you make the world a better place if you're a better person. I do the best I can under the circumstances, and any situation that I'm in. I want to be on the high road of things. I want to be the guy that opens the door. I don't want to be the guy that looks at people weird, or, I'm not that person. I'm a happy person. I want people to, love life and have fun with life and learn from some things, whether they're mistakes or failures or whatever. We're always learning about stuff. So there's nothing different there. You can't do anything different. You have to learn from things, and you're either going to learn in a good way or a bad way. And that's up to them to make that choice. And I'm telling you, the happier people in this world are the ones who have learned in a positive way from their mistakes, or learned from failures, or learned from whatever that was a negative thing that they've turned into a positive. Those are the happy people. The people that are sad and depressed and entitled and upset and grumpy and angry all the time, those are the ones that have never really challenged themselves. That's the opinion I have about people.
Wow, that kind of makes sense. One of my last podcasts, we were kind of talking a lot about, she was an MMA fighter, and she was talking a lot about meditation. And I thought that was a very interesting subject, because you think of fighting, you don't think of meditation, but she uses meditation on a daily, and that's helped her a lot. So I think that goes back to working on yourself and kind of just, and I think it's hard too, because even with the positive stuff comes, I'm guilty of this all the time. I'm trying to be happy. I'm trying to do this, and certain things still get you down sometimes. And you sometimes put too much pressure on yourself when you start doing stuff. And that's always been my downfall, putting too much pressure on myself. And my wife always has to be like, listen, you're doing great.
Good.
Everything's fine. You have a family. We're stable. So remember that stuff is still there. And I'm like, you're right. I have to look back and I have to think about that stuff. So we talked about some of the greats, and I think you kind of answered the next question, which are some of the struggles athletes make as business owners. Do you want to elaborate on that a little bit more, on more of the we'll say not the negative, but the struggles that athletes may go through as they're kind of pushing themselves into the business world?
Well, the first struggle that I found personally is what is it that I want to do? I think teams are doing better with that. Their player programs people, they've kind of understood that it is a challenge for guys when they retire, so they're trying to prepare guys better for retirement. We didn't have a lot of that help back when I was playing, but I think if I was better prepared and knew what it was I wanted to do, it would have been a much easier transition for me. So I think that's the first battle that a lot of guys have, is like, what do I do now? I really don't know what I want to do. What can I do? And when you think of failures in the business world from former athletes, the first thing that comes to my mind is their expectations. And I was kind of a victim of it as well. With regards to what I thought, like, hey, that's why I came back to Jacksonville. I thought, well, because I grew up in Washington State, and I'm like, okay, well, I kind of, I spent 7 years as a Jaguar kicker. I think people would know me. It was a good business decision for me to come back to the area that people kind of knew of me. Yes, people knew of me back in Washington State and everything, but I felt that I had more business opportunities here just because of my name and recognition. That wasn't necessarily true. It wasn't. And I was a little surprised, like, well, it's like, I feel like, people know me and they'll come to me because of who I am. And that's not necessarily the case. And so I think guys, and I've clearly admitted that I was a victim of it as well. And I think guys get this persona and this mentality that, oh, everyone knows me and they'll buy my product because of who I am. I learned the hard way. It is not like that. A lot of times they really don't care. If you're not playing football anymore, as sad as it is to say, if you're not playing football anymore and you're not in the limelight anymore, there are a lot of people out there that, it's okay, it's cool. Yeah, you're just, okay, you're an average Joe now. So again, it doesn't work on that. That's one thing that the expectation level that former professional athletes might have towards the success of what they think they're going to have with their business. Sometimes that can be a negative thing. They can be thrown off guard or surprised, kind of like I was, in a sense that I figured I'd have a lot more business, and I really haven't. And not to say it was an entitlement move, but it's kind of like, well, you feel like there should be a little bit of sense of like, I'm going to go with him because he played this. But again, I'm not, if I'm trying to be a doctor and I walk in in an interview and I have nothing on my resume to say that I know anything about being a doctor, clearly I'm not going to get that job as a doctor. So, you know, there's a lot of trust in businesses, and I think that there's people out there that, you know, want to trust you as a consumer, whether they're buying the product, they're buying their service, whatever. They need to trust that what it is you're offering that they want to believe in, of course. But I think sometimes players think that because of who they are, they're going to get what they want, and that's not always the case.
Yeah, and it's funny you say that, because I think that goes back to one of the original points we kind of talked about when you kind of brought up, what was I going to say? When you kind of brought up the whole playing thing and going out there on the field and trying to have a certain mindset. I kind of try to tell the same thing to my prospects and my clients is, listen, if you go out there and you look at this kind of like a business and not more so a career, you're able to turn off that mindset of certain negative aspects, but think about it as more as a leveraging point. So instead of going out there and trying to get, you know, make yourself like, oh, 1 million fans are following me and it makes me happy and all these people know who I am. Think about it more as, I have all these people following me, which is a great thing, but that gives me the ability of leveraging this free publicity I'm getting on the field to give positive insights to this, or become an influencer in this field, or do that. But leveraging your in-game time frame, and so that when you do get out, you do have this fan base that you could still kind of somewhat leverage in a way. And I know when you were playing, you didn't have social media, so it's a little bit different, but there's still, you know, I tell a lot of my clients, like, there's social media is only one aspect. I mean, that's just one. I mean, you have Google search, you have paid search, you have your website, you have your brand identity. So you have all these things that you businesses already have to do. So that you still have to do these things. It's not like you don't have to do these things if you want to succeed. And so, yeah, I agree with you on that. It's probably, you know, I never even really thought about it that way. So it's intriguing that you kind of said that a little bit. It gives me a little bit of insight, and I appreciate that. So in regards to building the brand, their brands in general, I think that kind of goes into what we were kind of just talking about. So what do you think some things athletes can learn in regards to that transition and building their brand, maybe if they're still in the game now or if they've just retired?
Well, I think that, you know, you have to treat it like you kind of are just a normal person at that point, and kind of limit your expectations with regards to what I just was talking about.
Yeah.
Don't get so, complacent and thinking that you're gonna be this successful person just because of who you are or who you were. There still is a lot of work put into it. And so that's that transition. You know, yes, I put a lot of work into being a football player and a kicker, and I maintained that. And I kept working hard day in and day out. Well, why would I not work hard in my normal everyday life now as a business owner? That doesn't make sense. Well, do you think I'm just going to come into an ownership position in a business and just kind of sit back and let things happen? It's not the case. It wasn't the case in football. I couldn't just coast as a kicker in the NFL. I actually worked harder while I was in the NFL than I did even getting to the NFL. So that should transition, which I think that I've done a decent job of, transition into the real world. You know, whatever business owner, whatever business position you have, whatever you're doing, I think you still have to have that same mentality of working hard to be successful at the business level. And you kind of tied in both the business and the athlete together in one. And it's the same sort of thing. It's like, I was working hard to maintain my business as a professional kicker. Why would I not want to work hard to maintain my success in my business as a kicking coach, or whatever it is I'm doing? So it's that same mentality. And I think that's another answer to one of your original questions as far as what benefits do former players have as business owners, is exactly that, is the work ethic, the understanding that you can't just coast through life. don't ever expect things to be handed to you. You've always had that habit and the ability to work hard for what you get and what you earn. It's no different in the real world. You want to work hard for what you get and what you deserve, what you earn in the real world as well. And so I think that's a misconception for a lot of people that come into business as former players that expect things to just kind of fall in their lap. And it might be the case for some people who, big name guys maybe, but not someone like me who's kind of, a kicker on we were very successful, and we were known as a really nice, good franchise and very competitive franchise back in the day. And hopefully we'll get back to those winning days again. But I didn't have a huge name for myself, and I'm not, clearly I wasn't expecting people to just, give me their money and, things to, fall in my lap and success, right out of the gate. I knew that I was going to have to work for it, and I have no problems doing that. So I think everyone should have that same sort of mindset. If you want a successful business and earn a great living and help people, that's kind of the primary thing for me, at least, is helping people. As far as the money is concerned, it's great. I do need money to survive, and I am working, as making a living doing this. So that is important to me as well. But I get more satisfaction out of helping people and sharing the information that I've that was passed on to me, sharing that information to them to make them, as best as they can be. So there's a lot of different mindsets when people enter the business world after retiring from football. And if you have that mindset of that complacent, like entitled complacency, we'll put it that way, that you're going to get burned. It's not going to work out the way you think. And you always have to work hard in life, no matter what it is you're doing, no matter who it is you are.
Yeah. And I'd like for people to realize too that it doesn't come easy for the high end players either. I mean, I've done a few critiques on some of the high end, like we'll just say Tom Brady, because he's the one that comes out of my head. But I've seen a lot of stuff come through where it's just the opposite. They spend more money on certain things, when in reality I look at it, I'm like, I can't believe you spent money on this. So you have to kind of look at it from both ends too. There's kind of, you need to work hard at, no matter where you are in the position of a professional athlete or a semi-pro or anything, you really have to work just as hard. There's no handouts for anyone when it comes to being a player or being a business owner. So how can you particularly help? We're getting close to the end of the podcast. How can you help other athletes move forward?
That's a pretty it's a easy question, but for me, getting my athletes to move forward is really understanding what it is I'm teaching, understanding that there's a lot more ability in them that they know. Trying to really expose the greatness within them, and really that comes down to explaining what it is that I'm trying to teach them, showing them at the age of 48 that I can still do what it is I'm trying to teach them and still do pretty well. And that's a fortunate thing. I try to stay young, and I'm the epitome of trying to defy the laws of physics when it comes to aging. I want to do the opposite. I want aging to go backwards for me. I'm doing really a lot of hard work trying to figure that part out. But it's rewarding for me to know that I'm helping these kids succeed in life. Yes, we're teaching them how to kick footballs and certain things, but more so and more importantly, it's about life and about they talk about the college recruiting process and so they get all bent out of shape about certain schools and things like that. And I say, listen, you got to find a school academically that fits what you want to do, because football is going to be a very, very, very small part of your life. Your career and what it is you want to study and do for your life and your career, that's going to be a heck of a lot longer than your football career for 99.9% of the kids, right? That percentage, that's a very, very small percentage of kids that actually play in the NFL, clearly. But the biggest thing really is just to help them understand, about life and how things work, and understanding that they really are much more capable than they think. And to just really expose their greatness. It really is.
Well, it was great to have you on. I really appreciate it. It was really informing. Let's end with a a much more a fan related question. So who do you think in the year 2020? Who do you think? And you can't say Jacksonville. Who do you think is going to win the Super Bowl this year?
Well, I mean, the Chiefs, they look pretty impressive. I'm not gonna lie. They are the defending Super Bowl champions, but they don't look any different than they did last year. They were great last year, and they still look great this year. I think they're going to be an incredible team. And Baltimore's got a great team as well. So I'm terrible at guessing, so I'm probably going to be wrong.
Well, if you could guess, you'd be a millionaire from betting, right? So I mean.
That was a safe bet for me. I might as well go with the defending Super Bowl champions. I mean,
I've always been an NFC side guy, so I always try to go for an underdog.
Seattle looks good. Seattle looks good this year.
Seattle looks really good. Russell looks really good this year. They've always had a very, and I've gotten in this with a couple other people that have been on, that it's all about the structure of the organization. So it comes back to that business aspect, and you just can look at certain teams and the way they form their inner workings that a lot of the fans don't see. And I think that really plays a really huge part. That plays a really huge part in the teamwork and the training and the way the teams make it even to the Super Bowl. It's not just about recruiting and on the field aspects. And I have a hard time choosing too. And I'd have to say, sad to say this because my dad's a huge Green Bay fan. I grew up a Green Bay fan before I switched to being a full-fledged Atlanta Falcons fan in my teens. But I'd have to say Green Bay is looking pretty good, especially with a lot of the injuries they have. They're still rolling. So I'm gonna have to go either Seattle or Green Bay on this one. But I see the Chiefs being the new Patriots. Yeah. Which makes me a little bit happy just because I've been just kind of sick of going to another Patriots Super Bowl over and over again. Well, it was great to have you on. Why don't you tell everyone a little bit where they can find you and how they can contact you if they need to.
Yeah, so my social media handles, they're all ProForm Kicking, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter is all ProForm Kicking, and ProFormKicking.com is a website. My personal Facebook is Hollis Mike. I'm wide open. I'm a very, very accessible person.
All right, beautiful. Again, I appreciate you being on the podcast, and we'll stay in touch.
Sounds good, Zach. Thanks, buddy.